Now, the mining value chain is the historic bedrock of South Africa's economy. It directly contributes more than 300 billion rand to GDP, employs more than 450,000 people, and is the economic anchor of many communities around the country. South Africa is now the 5th largest gold producer worldwide, but the country still has vast platinum reserves. For more on whether mining, or how mining rather, contributes to poverty in this country, we're joined by Benchmark Foundation lead researcher David van Wyk. David, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. You know, it's almost a bit of an oxymoronic question, because on the one hand, when mines come into town, it means, you know, economic activity. It means that things, at least on paper, should turn around for the better for those communities as well. Why do we find that in South Africa that is not the case?
Well, I think the reason for that is simple. The mines, the minerals belong to the state, and the state leases out the right to mine to mining companies. But once the minerals come out of the ground, those minerals no longer belong to the state or to South Africa, and they belong to the mining company that mines them. Many of these mining companies have got addresses in tax havens, and so they sell the minerals to themselves below global market value. And once the minerals are registered in the tax haven, they resell it on the global market at the actual prices. So you have mountains of platinum in Switzerland, and Switzerland is one of the biggest exporters of platinum in the world, even though they don't have a single platinum mine. But they do have the town of Zug, which is a major tax haven and tax evasion and, you know, avoidance hub in Switzerland. That's how Switzerland makes its money. And so consequently, we sit with a situation where a lot of our platinum goes out of the country as raw ore, and it gets refined outside of the country, and it gets beneficiated outside of the country and not in South Africa itself. So there's actually very little value left inside the country, except for that which is taxed, and these companies are past masters at tax avoidance and evasion. So that is one of the reasons why we've got, at the moment, a minerals boom in the country. These companies have all registered massive profits in the last year over the COVID year, because the global economy stopped for a couple of months and then it restarted. And when it restarted, the demands for minerals shot through the roof. And you actually have a situation where the platinum price is once more at historic highs of almost $2,000 an ounce, which is what it was before 2009 when the crash happened. You know, so the country is, the mining companies are cash flush in this country. But because we've got a weak government and weak Department of Mineral Resources, these companies are not held to their taxes, and they're also not held to their social and labor plans, and also to their commitments that they make when they are given the mining licenses in the first place. So you find that the mine workers live in informal settlements surrounding the mines, are not even in proper dwellings. If we compare it to Australian mine workers, where the mine worker stays in accommodation that is serviced, that they have 3 meals a day, they've got cable TV, they've got sport and recreation facilities. In South Africa, mine workers live in informal settlements in zinc shacks that are bitterly cold in winter and cooking hot in summer. You know, so we're really not looking after the people who produce our wealth in this country, and those are the mine workers. And unfortunately, we don't really respect our mine workers sufficiently.
One of the things that we also have, of course, when mines set up operations, is that there will be some level of impact on the environment, the surrounding environment, and often it leads to a degradation in some parts of the environment. Why are we finding that that is not changing as well? And perhaps you can just share with some of the research that you did on Marikana in particular.
Well, you see, the thing is that the reason for that is quite simple. We've got one super department in this country. It's called the Department of Mineral Resources. And basically, it takes over all the functions of other departments, such as the environment and water affairs and labor and health and so on. So when it comes to all other businesses in South Africa, you are subjected to the Department of Water Affairs, you are subjected to the Department of the Environment, you're subject to the Department of Labor and so on. But when you're a mining company, you are not. You are only answerable to the DMRE. And so you can get away with huge transgressions of environmental laws and legislation and so on. The other problem with South African legislation is that if there is, for example, air emission control regulations and limits that are set, you can apply to be exempted. Or if there are water regulations set, you can apply to be exempted. And if you look at the mining licenses that get submitted to the DMRE, very often they apply to be exempted. For example, there are mines in Limpopo that I looked at last week on Google Earth, where the mine is directly inside a water catchment and river area, which should be illegal in terms of environmental and water legislation in this country. But obviously the mining company had asked for exemption and gotten that exemption. The same with air pollution. Per capita, we have the worst air pollution in the world, but we're not dealing with it simply because the companies that are the worst polluters have been exempted from the legislation. It's like saying, I've got a driver's license and I can apply to drive 120 in a 60-kilometer zone, and the government gives me permission to do so. That is how ridiculous the situation is, and that's the kind of loopholes that needs to be closed down. And the government also really needs to enforce the social and labor plans and environmental impact assessments and management plans that companies submit when they are given licenses. But the department never actually does that, and this is why you have tragedies such as that at Marikana, as well as the impact, of course, on the water and air pollution in that particular area. If you are living in Inkaneng, a township or informal settlement, you suffer the consequences of very heavy air pollution from the smelters and mineral processing plants that are there. The sulfur dioxide and so on is so heavy in the air that your eyes actually burn and your nose burn when you breathe.
Benchmark Foundation lead researcher David van Wyk, let me thank you so much for coming onto the show tonight and sharing that particular perspective with us.